I'm here to talk to you guys about Flippa Invest. Some of you may have heard of Flippa, but Flippa Invest is the new fundraising platform that we're launching next month. So you guys are basically getting a sneak peek of what's about to come. And I'm going to talk a little bit about fundraising in the year 2025 and how we as a platform are leveraging the latest and greatest in AI to basically match startups and fundraising rounds with accredited investors on Flippa Invest. But before I do that, let me just give a quick introduction of myself. So I manage Flippa Invest at Flippa. But before I was doing this, I was at the helm of my own startup called bits4digits.com. It was acquired by Flippa. And so I now am kind of an entrepreneur in residence, if you will, managing Flippa Invests. But before that, at Bits4Digits, I was doing not fundraising, but secondaries. So helping founders take chips off the table in partial buyouts, basically. So kind of in the M&A space for a while. Before that, I was with BlackRock doing a few years in basically tech asset management. And prior to that, I was an analyst at Rocket Internet, fundraising a bunch of digital ventures. If you guys have ever heard of Rocket Internet, they're behind a few bigger companies like Zalando and HelloFresh and others. Right. So diving right into fundraising, it's kind of an old art, right? I think everyone here has some experience or at least have heard about what it's like fundraising. I did it for my own startup, and it's very laborious, right? You have to get in front of a lot of investors for that single investor to actually land an investment. So it's kind of a numbers game. It relies heavily on networks. So if you don't know people, then it's hard to find investors, and all these old networks can also be very geo-based. So you might have, a connection in Silicon Valley, or you might not. You might be based in a place like California, San Francisco, but you might also not be based in a place like that. And that can be kind of discouraging if you don't have the right access to the right people. And that can be despite having a great business on your hands. And that's kind of an old I guess relic that's still like hanging on to the art of fundraising is that it is very like network dependent. And so that's why Scott Kelly exists, right? And that's why various other connections and networks that you can be introduced to exist, angel networks, etc. But we are now in the year 2025, and actually AI can help us to a certain extent with matching potential opportunities or investment opportunities with the right investor. So you guys in the audience, you probably have startups, most of you. I don't know at which stage you guys are at, but what's important when we talk about these algorithms, these like neural networks, oftentimes as they're called, is that you have data, right? You need to know, well, who are you matching with what? And so Flippa as a company has actually been a marketplace with a lot of data on its hands for about 15 years. I'm going to show you a little bit of history here, or a little bit of a status quo on who Flippa is. So Flippa.com is actually the number one marketplace for M&A in the online business segment of the market. So if you own a digital startup of any kind, it could be a SaaS company, it could be an e-commerce, it could be anything, you can sell it, you can list it, and you can sell it on Flippa.com. The marketplace has been live since 2009, and the businesses that are being traded range from $5,000 to $50 million in enterprise value. And we have over 2 million buyers registered, and more than 6,000 institutional and strategic buyers worldwide. And we do and have done over 100,000 acquisitions globally, and 67% of those are transacted cross-border, right? So you might have a business registered in the US, but you might find a buyer in Europe. And so really the world is your oyster if you're trying to sell your business with Flippa. And so with all that history, with all those transactions, with all those buyers, we have actually, maybe I should also just cover this off. So we have over 600,000 annual searches. And you can see what the buyers are looking for, right? SaaS, some are looking for specific, AI businesses, which is great, and that's growing. Actually, this is no longer like number 10; it's more like number 4 or 5 in our search history. And also like other categories like media business or content businesses, Amazon FBAs if you're e-commerce. And all this data, all the buyers, all the sellers, all the transactions, all this intent data has allowed us to develop our own proprietary AI that matches buyers with sellers. And we use something called graph neural networks, which allows us to basically take several different inputs and forecast or predict what would be interesting to a buyer given his behavior on the platform. And what we've done is basically we've taken all this, all these buyers, all this data and our algorithm, and figured out, well, if they're looking to buy these types of businesses, are they also in the market for investing? And so we ran a survey, actually a pretty old school survey, figure out, well, who of these buyers are also interested in investing, and how many of them are accredited, because you need to be accredited for us to solicit deals to them. So that led to Flippa Invest. And this is basically, it took us 16 years to bring Flippa Invest to the market, where we're not talking buying and selling businesses. We're talking raising capital and investing in businesses. So it comes complete with end-to-end functionality for you to bring your round to 75,000 accredited investors, and for us to match your round with appropriate relevant investors. So we make intros, we invite them into your deal room, you engage with them, and we close their checks, right? Like we collect their checks and fund your business. And so I'm going to just dive a little bit into how we do this. So data, right? Data is at the core of Flippa Invest, I would say. I mean, we also still have like the ability, of course, and actually the requirement for you to include a pitch deck if you're raising capital on Flippa Invest. Founder bios, your like LinkedIn profile, all that stuff is going to go onto your fundraising page on Flippa Invest. But we're also going to integrate data from third-party tools like Stripe, QuickBooks, Google Analytics. So if you want to display, here's the traction I have with, visitors to my business, then Google Analytics. Here's my customer retention or churn from Stripe. Here's my P&L, my expenditures for the business, marketing spend, etc. from QuickBooks. You can plug all this into Flippa Invest, and we're of course going to make it hidden behind an NDA, so that no one that's not supposed to see your data sees your data. But the important thing is that investors are very keen to get access to not just the pitch deck, but also to see verified metrics of, okay, is this business actually is it actually a business, or is it just an idea in a Google in a Google slide deck? And that's really where I think Flippa Invest distinguishes from other fundraising platforms like AngelList. But obviously, the other key way that it distinguishes is the fact that it has 75,000 accredited investors, and we will match your round with the 75,000 accredited investors that we have on the platform. And so the way we do it is pretty simple. Like we're gonna mass market your round to all of our investors, but obviously, like blasting an email out to 75,000 investors, only so many are going to engage with that, right? Only a subset of those. There's an open rate, and then there's a click-through rate, and we also have like text messages that go out, and also in like platform notifications to their accounts on Flippa Invest. But only a subset of those will actually react. However, we have segmented all of our investors on the platform to basically see, okay, who is interested in this business that we just solicited. And then from that intent or from that behavior of that one investor going into the listing, viewing the round, and perhaps entering the deal room, well, who here matches that other investor, right? So we can tell from that cluster of that one investor who had that behavior, well, we should target similar investors in that cohort, with basically going more, I guess, labor intensively into soliciting that round to those types of investors. So we'll do both, which is mass solicitation of all of our investor bases, and then from that take the behaviors and intents and all the data we have on those engagements and go out and basically harass even more of our investors that match a similar profile to make sure that they have seen that this startup is raising a round, that because they are interested, these other investors, and you have a similar profile, you could be interested in as a similar profile of an investor. So we basically use AI in a bunch of different ways to kind of get a feel for, okay, you're this type of investor, and given that you are in the same cohort with other investors who are interested, you're probably interested too. So we're going to do everything we can to get you to view this round. And that's the AI investor matching, where we use the GNNs that I explained previously. And then if we look at what happens after we make the match, right? You integrate your data, we match you with investors. Well, then we invite them into your deal room. And this is where you can basically show sensitive information. You know, you can share a P&L, you can basically answer Q&As, you can do Q&As, you can host webinars, like to do, you know, a live pitch if they want to see a live pitch, and basically engage with them investors and bring them to closing, right? That's where Flippa Invest, you know, kind of stops. I mean, of course, you have a dedicated account manager. If you need help or you need to moderate a webinar or a pitch, some kind of live Zoom call, your dedicated account manager will join and basically, you know, make sure that all the investors that join your call are, you know, moderated in a way that makes it easy for you to present and take Q&A. But the engagement inside the deal room that you do with the investors that enter is up to you, right? You are in charge here, and you can share the files that you want, and you can you know, message with the investors that you want to engage with, and you can say, I'm not interested in engaging with this investor based on their profile, which, by the way, you can see. So you can see each investor that enters. You can go through and click to their profile and see, okay, this is their LinkedIn. Is this someone I want to engage further with? Is this an investor that brings added value to my round, right? Do they have networks? Do they have expertise that I wish to have on my cap table or not? And if you choose not to engage with them, that's totally fine. You are in the control seat in the deal room. And then what we then offer inside the deal room is also for you to sign term sheets with the investors that are interested in your round. So all the 75,000 investors that we, you know, as we go through the funnel, you can then move to close, right? After you engage with them, do Q&A with them, share additional, you know, sensitive information with them. Inside the deal room, you can also sign term sheets. So you bring the terms to Flippa Invest, you know, whether it be a safe note or it be a priced round, you bring all of that through. And as an end-to-end fundraising platform, Flippa Invest, of course, supports via Dropbox Sign for you to also sign term sheets. And even if you want to create a side letter for an investor, that's also possible. All of this inside the deal room. And then finally, once you're ready to collect investment, right? During capital call, we have two options for you. You either do it via our own payment rails called Flippa Pay, which is basically a trust account where the investor will fund the account and we'll release the funds into your business, you know, upon receipt that, you know, you have a signed term sheet or signed, you know, share purchase agreement, or you use our partner, which is Sidecar, which is our SPV provider on Flippa Invest in case you raise through an SPV. And I can you know, explain what an SPV is for those who are not in the know about that. But yeah, to kind of recap Flippa Invest, we have 75,000 accredited investors that we built up over 16 years of doing M&A in the digital business area, and they have a budget of 75 billion. So in short, we kind of offered the biggest network of accredited investors, which comprised of high net worth individuals, private equity funds, and family offices. Those are the ones you can expect to find on Flippa Invest. And let's just double tap on the high net worth individuals, because I think it's kind of a unique group of individuals that we've got registered on the platform, because these guys are typically exited founders or current business operators who bring a lot of expertise and network to businesses of that might have a similar trait to your business. So if you engage with them and they're interested in investing in your business, they might have more than just capital. They might be smart money, in the more slang way of putting it, because it's not similar to crowdfunding where perhaps friends and fools are funding your business. It's a bit different in that these are accredited, meaning they have a high net worth above $1 million, but they also bring with them, like, how do they come to money, right? Okay, some of them might have inherited money, but the vast majority on Flippa Invest are themselves founders or exited founders who have a lot of network, a lot of expertise in a certain domain that you can leverage. So going further, and looking a little bit at who is eligible to raise growth capital on Flippa Invest. Well, we are launching in the US, meaning you need to have a registered business in the US. So you can be based elsewhere outside of the US, but you need to have your top co, your parent company, operating in the United States of America. And it needs to be an online business. So Flippa historically has been M&A for online businesses, and that's still true to this day. So SaaS businesses, mobile apps, media businesses, fintechs, marketplaces, e-commerce businesses, any business that is basically a digital company can raise, as long as they have a US registered entity. And then secondly, they need to have growing revenues. And this is because it's hard to connect data to Flippa Invest for your round if there is only a pitch deck, right? If it's not a business, it's hard to show verified data of this is the traction that my business is currently having in the market. So data is it's basically a demand for our mandate from our investors to show not just to tell, but to show the business and how it's performing for them to invest in that business. So growing revenues is really a must if you're raising on Flippa Invest. And I know some of you might be a bit early stage. You might not have revenue yet, but at the point at which you do start to experience revenue is the point that you can start to raise on Flippa Invest and get in front of these 75,000 accredited investors. And then finally, what kind of rounds can you raise? Well, I mentioned it's growth capital, right? You want to grow a growing business, and investors want to get in basically early as possible in on that growing business. And we're starting with smaller rounds. Flippa Invest is brand new to Flippa, but we're starting small and we're allowing for oversubscription. So even if you aim to raise $500,000 or $1 million, and there's interest from our 75,000 investors for you to raise more than $1 million, then you can still take that capital. Of course, we're not gonna prevent that. We're not gonna prohibit that. If you have room to basically dish out more shares for your round, then we allow it, of course, both through our SPV provider, Sidecar, and through the direct raise option, which I'll get to in a minute, how that works. And it does work because we've had guys like Michael Fink raise $250,000 in just a couple of weeks. Basically, his testimonials is that the process of securing funding on Flippa Invest was fast and frictionless from launch to close. They received dedicated support throughout the preparation and go live of their round and got massive exposure and inbound interest from investors on the platform. And he cannot recommend it enough for busy startup founders and SMB operators looking to raise smart money. And I think what Michael is saying about busy startup founders, I myself, when I was a founder, was didn't really know how I would ever find time to go and raise capital, because I realized raising capital is almost a full-time job. And next to that, you're supposed to build a product or offer a service, close customers, maintain customers, develop new services and products. And at the same time, you're full-time raising funds. How do you do that? And instead, Flippa Invest we have the investors on the platform. You just plug in your business, embed your pitch deck, and then we launch your round, right? And we will solicit and market your round to our investors. And then you just engage with them in the deal room. It's that simple. And so Michael was really happy with it. And I think some of you guys will be too. Going on to how it works, right? So the first thing is that we do have a screening process because we do have requirements. We're not just going to bring every business that wants to raise in front of our 75,000 accredited investors. Otherwise, they're going to lose interest really quickly. So we are a bit picky about who gets to raise on Flippa Invest, given the fact that we just have such an active and engaging community of investors. So you do need to fulfill our requirements, which again are US registered entity with growing revenues, needs to be a digital business, and then raise somewhere between 50K and $1 million. And then once you have applied to raise, we prepare your fundraising page and basically start the solicitation process where we market your round to our 75,000 accredited investors on the platform, both through mass, like emailing and mass marketing, but also through our more tailored and like bespoke AI matching algorithm. So that's step 2. Step 3 is that you engage with the investors that enter your deal room. And this is where you can make use of the like instant chat functionality, the hosting of live webinars, pitches, and you can basically share whatever you want, like in terms of sensitive data, documents, and files with whomever you like in the deal room, and you can choose not to engage with whoever is trying to engage with you if their profile is not a fit for who you would like to have invest in your business. And then finally, you close to collect capital, right? This is where you can sign term sheets and you can basically fund your business through our payment services. And so these are the fundraising options. I'm just going to bring up the first one here. A direct raise is one of 2 ways of raising capital on Flippa Invest. The direct raise option is more of a self-service option, tailored for smaller rounds. So if you're raising, let's say, 100K or 200K, perhaps like a few, like maybe a couple of investors can fill that round. Because again, these are accredited investors. The check sizes are way bigger than on crowdfunding platforms, right? So you can actually set your own minimum investment check size, and you can say, well, I will not have investors fund for less than $10,000 or $50,000 per investor. And so you might have only like a couple of investors fill your round, and it doesn't make sense to create an SPV, which is a separate entity to pool investors under. So you're just going to onboard them one by one directly to your cap table. And this is called a direct raise. And the alternative option to that is the group raise. The group raise is where our partner, which is Sidecar, provides an SPV to pool the investors in. So if you're raising $1 million, I would strongly encourage you and advise you to do a group raise using an SPV, where your cap table is going to stay neat and tidy because all of the investors that invest in your round are going to be pooled inside the entity, the SPV, which will appear on your cap table as a single line item. And that will make it way easier for you to manage and file taxes. In fact, our partner SPV provider, Sidecar, is going to do all of that. They're going to file SEC filings, the K1s, all of the tax and SEC filings is going to be done by them throughout the life of the SPV. So throughout, however long it takes for your startup to exit down the road. So those are the 2 options. And I usually say we have the fastest, easiest, and cheapest way to secure funding. And here is our pricing. So here's how much it costs to basically launch a round on Flippa Invest. So we have a direct raise option that I mentioned, and the launch fee is the same regardless of whether you're doing a direct raise or a group raise with an SPV. We charge $3,500 to solicit 75,000 accredited investors, right? You can, of course, choose to not use a service like Flippa Invest and go about it yourself. But you're going to spend, I think, a lot of time doing it. At least I spend a lot of time doing it myself. And you're going to reach, I think, a different audience than the audience that we have on Flippa Invest by doing so. So we don't have VCs. I should say that up front. As I mentioned earlier, we have private equities, family offices, and these high net worth individuals who mostly consist of current and exited founders. And so it's hard to find these guys if you don't have, let's say, maybe connections in the Valley or connections in the US already. And so we have a whole network of engaged investors who are looking actively for opportunities like perhaps your startup. So we do charge a launch fee to bring your round to market. And then in case of a successful raise, we also charge a platform fee. So if you raise, say, $100,000, then we during a direct raise, then we do have a 2.5% platform fee charged to each investor that invests in your round. And then on the group raise, we have a 4% of capital raise that we retain upon paying out your SPV. So our partner Sidecar takes I think 2.5%, and we take 1.5%. So that makes 4%. And then you can see the benefits in terms of all the filings, taxes, KYC, and all that stuff. You're responsible for that yourself on the direct raise, but for the group raise with the SPV, all of that is done for you. But again, you can find more information on our website if you want to just study this a bit further, and I encourage you to do that. But yeah, basically you can apply to raise growth capital on flippa.com/invest today. We're going to be launching next month. So the platform went live with a pilot. We funded a few businesses, and now we're going into production, and we're going to keep Flippa Invest as an integral part of flippa.com